overview of why we thought this might be a good idea. In a lot of cases, when we're looking at the needs, we have done a really good job of following the ordinance as it's was laid out, and we have a lot of small parks in different areas, and we do think that they're really important. However, the ordinance is somewhat restrictive because it does tell us exactly when we need to approve one and when we do not. In a lot of cases, because it's a small community, I'm sorry, I'm freezing in here, we have no need for another small park. Let me give you a impactful statement. Sometimes we have a community that's right next to a school, and the school has a lot of park facilities or playground facilities, which we don't really have the funds to replicate, and if we did, it wouldn't be to the same standard, and it's right next door. So in that case, shouldn't the park board have some more degree of determination about whether or not it would be appropriate to maybe take funds in lieu of a park in that instance, because there's a park right there. I believe that you all have a letter in your packet, and I feel like I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage because I haven't seen the letter. I was only told of it about a half an hour ago. And it makes some claims about why we may have chosen to change the ordinance. And I don't think that the claims are exactly true, so I want to go ahead and address it. But if I have some part of the letter wrong, or if you have more questions about some of those claims, I'll be happy to answer them. But it states that this is in relation to us not having funds. I know you guys know that in the last several years we have been dealing with less taxes, and we have been having to make decisions about our funding based on knowing that we have less money coming in. We've tried very hard to be proactive about that because we're now operating without a recreation coordinator, as you know. We did that in advance of some of this. We also are preparing to have maybe even a little less next year. In the case that the budget comes in, we'll be able to put our money back into reserves. And we don't have a crisis, and the money isn't coming in to fund day-to-day operation of the park. But this is what we are hearing from people in the communities, and that is that we have a need for a big type of play complex. We either need to have some sort of ball fields or soccer fields, and that's where we're really feeling the stress right now. And so while we think small parks, community parks are very important, we do want to have the opportunity to accept $100,000, $200,000 from a big community that comes in that would be able to help us fund some of these larger projects, which is what we're hearing citizens telling us we need at this point. So it isn't because of a short budget, it isn't to fund day-to-day operation. It is only to try to give us a little bit more flexibility in making decisions about how best to fit our community. So that's really why we brought it to your attention. And certainly it isn't in response to any single effort or issue going through the city going on right now, and it wouldn't address that. It would just be on a case-by-case basis as new communities come in. So with that, I'll answer any of your questions. Or
hold this when I go.
I actually do have a question. I understand what you're saying as far as having a new community come in or a new plat that is close to another park or school park, things like that. So instead of changing the entire ordinance as far as removing any type of acreage requirements, could you have added in, it follows this unless there's a park within 500 yards of the plat? That way you still have some type of guidance based on ordinance for the size of the plat and the monies for needing a park, but you also have that ability, if there is a park, to have more flexibility.
I think we discussed that to a certain degree, but we didn't know where that line is drawn or how we would quantify what that line was. So we went just for the wisdom of having more than one, board member, that would be determined by whoever was on the board at the time. But I mean, that's an opportunity, an option.
Trying to quantify that in a formulatic way would be nigh impossible. in an effort to get exactly that, and I think that Molly's exactly right, what you have to then rely on, or you all appoint to have the wisdom to determine when those times are better suited than others. Because I mean, it really comes down to a lot of different variables that would be very difficult to write up, and potentially would change throughout the years. You know, if a park was close by, but then there was a multitude on the other side that didn't have a park, then you'd still want one there on that side. I mean, it would be very difficult to manufacture that formula.
We just felt like the process would allow, since we're still having public hearings and all of that, the process would just allow it for us to be, and you, to be open to the hearing process. And then between the board and the hearing process, we could make good decisions.
Are there any questions from the board? Alderman Yancey?
Surprise, surprise. The ordinance that's been submitted to us tonight for approval really doesn't take the final decision-making process from the Board of Aldermen. That, you know, that would come, whether to accept dedicated land or fees would be the final decision of the Board of Aldermen, as I understand it. It would only be a recommendation of the Park Board. And I understand and empathize with your problem, because I see the guys cutting grass every week on a whole square block. So I understand where you're coming from, but I just want everyone to know that the final decision on whether funds or open space will be provided to the city is a decision that's made by this board.
Absolutely, and we've had a good working relationship between our board and your board in the past, and it would always hopefully work in the same relative manner.
I just wanted that clarified at the public hearing level, so people know.
Any other questions from all? Are there any other comments from the public?
Yeah, my name is Les Williams. I live over here in Remington Drive, and I think this also pertains to the park. Originally, Hunter's Ridge was supposed to have a park at one time. Is that better? Yeah, Hunter's Ridge was supposed to have a park at one time, and I believe either the park or the city waved it over to the second phase, and now I understand there's not a second phase no longer, because it's totally different now. But so if that developer develops in there and they're proposing over 100 homes in there, you're talking, 60 acres there with no park. And if you throw in over 100 homes in that next subdivision, I think those kids that are going to be in there, growing up there, definitely deserve a park, at least between the two subdivisions. And that's quite a bit of land right there to have no park available. And I know they might say, well, the school's right behind us, we can go over there, but whether or not the school wants it or not, I don't know. I don't know how the school feels about as far as going on their property and using their grounds. So all I'm saying is, with all that land there, I believe there should be a park there, because there was supposed to have been a park in the first phase. So I like to see a park, at least in that second building stage, especially if you're going to throw all those homes in there.
Alderman Sparks?
Okay, first of all, there is a confusion here. This is not second phase of Hunter's Ridge.
That's correct.
Hunter's Ridge
Right.
is finished.
Correct.
Now, if you wanted to go back and get land for that, then we'd have to go back into Hunter's Ridge somehow, which I don't think we're going to accomplish.
Right, but originally there was supposed to be.
But your argument is irrelevant to the property in question right now.
And actually, the hearing is purely over the ordinance and is not specific to any one park or project.
I'd like to see a park over there.
Well, sure, and it should have went in Hunter's Ridge, is where it should have.
Correct.
But it didn't.
Correct.
And now, that really has nothing to do with that property, though.
No, it doesn't, but when you're throwing in over 100 homes, don't you think a park would be there?
Again, based on your original argument, it's irrelevant.
It's not an argument, I'm just stating.
Actually, it is an argument. You present a side, I present a side. It's an argument.
I like to
And
see
actually,
parking. I would like to see parking.
the actual purpose of this is over the ordinance and not discussion of Hunter's
Right.
Ridge or Hunter's View.
Correct.
So let's just move beyond that and get back to the ordinance. So, Alderman Davis.
I guess I just wanted to, by changing this ordinance, we are just giving the park board the authority to review in the future whether they want to do this or not. Is that correct?
Correct.
This
It
is not
gives-
saying that somewhere down the road, we could say we want to put a park in somewhere. I mean, it's not saying that we're
It's
never.
basically gives the park board the ability that when a subdivision is presented to them, that if there are sufficient park space nearby, they can then, in lieu of that, take funds. And it's not based on a certain acreage size.
And the board of aldermen went back
And
there.
then the board of aldermen has the final approval of all plats anyway.
And just to add to that, right now, as long as we stay on that, I think what this actually, man, this is working very, I think what this is, what we're considering actually gives the ability to determine more the need of how we want developments to occur. Yeah, individual parks are good, but as the park board brought before, and they've been bringing up for many years, is they would like to see the ability to put in some sort of complex that has more than 1 or 2 ball fields in it. And you're not going to do that in a small park dedication type of thing. So how do you accomplish that? They've given an idea. Now, does it have merit? I think so, but that's something for the rest of the board to consider also.
Are there any other public comments? Any other comments from the board before we close the public hearing? Alderman Bellington?
I just want to make sure that we're cautious in if we approve this ordinance in this form, that we're cautious that we're not looking only short term, that we're not, we can have immediate short term cash needs and still have long term land needs. And once the opportunity to secure land for parks are gone with a subdivision, they're gone forever. You don't get them back.
And that's something that we would need as a board to make sure we are reviewing prior to any approvals.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Anytime that you're considering something like this should not be for the operating budget of the park.
Right.
Because those expenses are going to continually come back on you and repeating expenses. And I don't know how you would do it, but it should be put in a way to where if you decided to accept cash in lieu of land, that money should be dedicated towards the eventual land purchase. So,
Alderman Carmen?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to withhold comment until such time as we discuss the motion.
I just had a quick question. How many parkland areas are there within the city at this time? There's 5.
5.
How many of those?
Depends if you count the 1912 buildings.
Okay.
Count that.
6.
How many of those actually have improvements, such park-like amenities on them at this time?
Solid 4.
4. Okay.
Well, 5 again. if you count the 1912.
It's 5 of the 6 if you count the school.
And are there picnic tables, shelters, playgrounds?
Generally a little bit of everything. The one that really doesn't is Centennial Hills. It's finishing up a walking path right now, and that's essentially all that's there. That's the one that is the one that's the most lacking of anything. The other ones need some other things to go in them. I mean, if you look at the master plan for the park, Chestnut is very still underdeveloped, but it does have picnic tables and drinking fountains and a walking path and a shelter. But it's also scheduled to have potentially some courts, either basketball or tennis or something along those
and as a playground as well.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all I have.
We also had a letter in our packet from a citizen that has to be addressed.
I'm reading a letter from Gary Schwartz that I received. I'm able to attend October 10th public hearing for the proposed change regarding park site dedication. However, I do have concerns that I would like to have addressed. Please see to it that my concerns expressed below are read at the meeting. Schedule 1 of Odessa's General Code, copied below, specifies a dollar amount per dwelling unit as park fee dedication when the subdivider provides money in lieu of parkland. We've all been very much aware that the park board desires money more than it desires land, and I'm wondering about the fee of $1,481 per dwelling unit. It doesn't seem to be an arbitrary number that someone pulled out of a hat, so I'm wondering what formula was used to arrive at that number. Then I'm wondering how long it has been since it was updated and whether the formula used would produce a different number today. The ordinance was revised in February 2007, so it's been at least 4.5 years, and we all know what prices have done in that time. It would seem that while we are updating the ordinance, now would be a good time to address that issue. So I would like to know specifically how was the number 1,481 derived, and is it still an appropriate number? Also, to avoid this type of issue in the future, the ordinance could be revised to specify the formula instead of a fixed dollar amount. That way, it would always be current. The other land use types, 2-family and multifamily, should be considered in the same manner.
That's just
Right. And that was signed, respectfully, Gary M. Schwartz. I don't have any, I'm unable to answer any questions. He just asked me to ensure that this was read at the meeting.
Are there any other comments? All right, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And at this time, I will go ahead and call to order our regular session. Mr. Bucker, would you please lead us in the pledge?
To the flag of the United States of America, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Alderman Yancey.
Here.
Alderwoman Davis. Here. Alderman Carmody.
Here.
Alderman Wright.
Here.
Alderman Bellington.
Here.
Alderman Sparks.
Here.
Quorum's present.
All right, I'd like to welcome all of the public tonight. I'm going ahead and open it up for public comments. So if you have a public comment, please come forward and use the mic.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I'm here to
Name and address.
Harold Anderson, 803 Ozark Short Line, Centennial Lane. I'd like to bring to you, to make you aware of the slight problem we have in Centennial, next door to Meeting Fire. It's an R1 district, individual family home. I have a man next door that I'm sure, in fact I can prove it, that there was witness that he is renting out rooms. People that come to town, work somewhere else or here temporarily. And anyway, it's an aggravation. If we continue to allow that type of thing, it'll bring our property values down. But one morning I woke up and that's all started. Previous Mike case that, I think you rented a room there for a couple of months. He tried to make it a secret, you don't go back in real quick, so nobody can see, but anyway, I spotted it. But anyway, one morning I woke up and went out, and there was about 4 or 5 cars in the driveway next door, and a couple on the street, a long trailer secured, a wall over there, sitting out there in the street. Kind of wondered what was going on over there. So anyway, it's something that I think should be brought to a stop, halt. I went in City Hall, tried to get an answer there, and I wasn't satisfied with that. I was led to believe as long as they had a bathroom, rooms, and bathroom for each room, you had to let it out, it would be all right. Which I know that's not the case. It shouldn't. I copied the zoning regulations off the internet. And it says R1 district, an individual family home. I looked up the definition of family in Webster's dictionary. It says a group of people, common ancestors. And I know there's folks over there that are not all family. So, I'd just like to make you aware of it on the zoning board and see if I can get an answer there.
Mr. Anderson, I do know, I have spoke to Sandy about this because she's aware of it. She's been called and made aware of it as well. And through her investigation, Sandy's our codes enforcement person, and based on looking at how it defines whether it's a boarding house or those, it's based on a number. And currently, if they rent out a room or two, depending on the number of families, it's not considered a boarding house. And so what she has told me, based on our current ordinances, it's well within the ordinance. Now, whether we think that's appropriate or not is a different story. But based on what she had read as far as what's considered a boarding house and within ordinance, I wish you were here tonight to be able to go into more detail.
It's an R1 district.
Correct.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is an updated zoning regulation. Last time was revision July 28, 2008. So it's current, I would say. Property and buildings, this use is permitted. Says property and buildings in an R1 single family dwelling district shall be used only for the following purposes. The first one is a detached one-family dwelling. Webster defines that as a family. It's a group of persons of common ancestry. Now, that is not the case.
There are many homes where people rent out their basements, rent out rooms that are well within R1.
Does not make it legal because it's practice.
But that's not against the law to rent out a room. Many people will rent out their basements, right? They have an in-laws quarters that they could rent out, something in their basement. So, but based on ordinance, the way our current ordinances read, and I will get with Sandy again, and we will review it, and I'll bring it to we'll have Sandy bring it to the board next meeting.
Speeding is not against the law, is what you're talking.
So I will bring it back to the board at our next meeting, and I'll have Sandy here to discuss this because she won't be here. So we'll have to wait till then, but I will get Sandy involved in it and make sure we get a report back to the board on how this actually falls within our ordinances and get a report. So I will do that.
Okay, well, I can read.
I know you can, Harold.
You know, I've got an education, high school, believe it or not.
I know you do, Harold.
Can you tell us when that meeting would be then, when Sandy will be back?
It'll be probably the first meeting in November, which would be the first Monday. Second Monday. Please do that. 9th.
The 9th?
Yep, it'd be the 9th. No, it'd be the 14th.
Second Monday, yeah, the 14th.
Yeah, the first is a Tuesday, that's right.
Yeah, the first is a Tuesday, so it'd be the 14th of November.
At
So
7?
make sure, I'm
At
sorry?
7 or as soon as?
It'll be 7, or it should be our normal time, but it'll be posted.
Okay.
So make sure we get with that. Do that. Are there any other public comments?
Yes. Yes, Wayne Neal, 426 James Circle. Yes, I run onto Mr. Anderson here last week, and he was telling me about this, and so I just thought I'd just bring your ordinances to you. I don't think a lot of you know it. Chapter 8, 8.105 definitions, under 8.105:19 says dwelling, single family, a dwelling designed to be occupied by one family. 8.105, dwelling, two family, is a dwelling designed to be occupied by two families living independently of each other. And 8.105 is garage apartment, a dwelling unit for one family erected above a principal garage. Then if you go down to 8.20, R1 district, single family dwelling district. 8.201 general description says the principal use of land is for single family dwellings. 8.202-2 says uses permitted. Property and buildings in an R1 single family dwelling district shall be used only for the following purposes. And A is detached one family dwelling. So it is not an R2, not for multiple family.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comments at this time. We will move forward now to the mayor's report. The only thing that I had for this week, for those of you that did not get the opportunity to do it, I know I saw Alderwoman Davis there, but I attended the Odessa's Got Talent at the high school a couple of Fridays ago, and I was very impressed. We have some very, very talented young people in the city, writing their own music, playing music, dancing. So I just wanted to state that it was very impressive when I attended that. So that is all I have for my report this week. I'll go ahead and start with the Alderman's reports. Alderman Yancey.
I have nothing to report.
Alderman Bellington.
I have nothing to report tonight.
Alderman Davis.
I have nothing to report, Mr.
Alderman Carmody.
Likewise, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Sparks.
Nothing to report.
Alderman Wright.
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
All right, let's go ahead and move forward then to department managers reports. First on the agenda is the summary of I&I. It looks like John and Paul will be delivering this.
When Paul and I got the engineering report on the I&I, it was requested by the alderman. When I got that information, looking through it, it was pretty evident that a lot of the information on there could be summarized. So for the sake of cutting down on the paperwork that you had to read, and also to hit the high points instead of having to read through all of it, we decided to just make a quick summary of it to hit all of the things. The objectives of the I&I report and to take a look at the information and the current status of the sewer lines. The City of Odessa contracted with Larkin to study the inflow and infiltration into the sewer system. For those that do not know what inflow and infiltration is, that is just flow into the sanitary sewage system that is not coming from the normal sanitary or sewer lines within the home. And infiltration filtration is just water that is infiltrating through, say, cracks, crevices, or breaks in the line from the groundwater for when it rains and that sort of thing. The problems is that I&I brings to you is that it increases the normal volume of sewage in the system. The water that is in the system, it increases that. It increases pumping and treatment costs, causes maintenance issues for the entire wastewater systems, and large quantities of wastewater during wet periods can overload the treatment facilities, causing upsets in the normal treatment process and often bypasses partially treated sewer system into the receiving streams. All bypass of waters from treatment plants must be reported to the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, and we are in compliance with all of them. The city contracted with Larkin, who worked with ACE Pipe Cleaning Incorporated, ABC, to clean and inspect the city sewer system. Inspection took place over the months of April, May, and June 2011. 275 sections. Section is from one manhole to the next manhole. 275 sections were mapped and inspected, and sections, repair crews can actually pinpoint exactly where the problem is. What they basically do is go in with a closed caption camera and send a remote camera down the receiving sewer line and then the ending, and so, or the receiving manhole and the ending manhole, and they take a look at all the pipe from those two manholes. They can actually pinpoint where problems are, so that it solves a little bit of our problem when we come to time to dig and pinpoint the problem. We know exactly where it is. The Larkin group is still in the process of examining the findings at a deeper level. What they presented to us is just a large overview. The objective of the process was to identify as many sources of I&I as possible using the ABC survey reports and photographs, assist the city in developing a budget that prioritize repairs, develop a plan that outlines structural problems with all sewer sections, and lastly, identification of sewer segments that are blocked, partially blocked by cave-in, or have, in a few cases, there's other utilities that have penetrated the sewer lines. As they ran a pipe or ran cable or something like that. We have instances of that has happened. The findings, again, they're pretty comprehensive. Mobile cameras used to inspect each foot of the sewer pipes and identify and document problems and maintenance issues. Sags, cracks, offset joints, broken pipes, collapsed pipes, groundwater infiltration, and I'll go into that more in just a moment, and then also root penetration. What this does is, again, it eliminates guessing about what the problem is. We know where the lines are flowing correctly, where they're flowing well, and then we also find exactly where they're not working so well. Again, if there's blockages, if there's cracks, if there's water infiltration, those type of things. It saves us quite a bit of money by having this remote camera go down there and exactly find what the problems are. Eliminates the digging the line up. Some people make fun of lawyers, no offense. I make fun of engineers because they use words like in situ, that means in position. They can fix the line right where it sits without having to dig it up, without having to excavate the entire area. They can do in situ type fixes to eliminate problems. They can also pinpoint exactly where the problem is in case digging is required, so that we're not wasting time and digging up more pavement than necessary. Again, it took place over a 3-month period, mostly dry conditions. There were a few rainy days, And many of the broken and damaged pipes did not show infiltration, but they are strongly suspected of infiltration during rainy days. So they did identify some places where they had water coming in, but those were during the rainy days. On the days when it was dry, it's suspected that there was more, but they didn't see anything. But they're suspected that there is quite a bit more. Infiltration and structural deficiency are strongly linked. If you're seeing water coming in through a crack, that's a good sign that the pipe isn't very strong, that it's been weakened in some way, and sooner or later that crack will get worse, we'll have more infiltration, which the pipe will continue to deteriorate. So we're looking at those. That's one of the reasons we're really taking a look at this. Trying to identify and eliminate surface water infiltration points. That's a few things that the city can do right now. The manholes or the sanitary sewer access covers and lamp hole covers. If you're getting a lot of water that is flowing into those, that is adding to it. Those can kind of be taken, can be addressed a little bit by Public Works at this time, and they're looking at those to see what they can do. Also, any direct conduit that lets rain or other water into the sanitary sewer system. If there's big cracks in the ground that's right above a sanitary sewer line or something like that, that's some things, or cracks in pavement, those are some things that also can lead to I&I issues. Infiltration. This is an actual picture of one of our pipes taken on a rainy day. You can see that we have a gusher. That is infiltration level. There's three of them, three levels. The first one is gusher. That means it's a stream of water coming into the sewer pipe. There were 3 gushers that were identified out of the 275 sections. Again, that's probably a lower number given that most of the inspections that were done on dry days. Level 2 is runners. It's a modest but continuous stream of water that is coming into the system. There were 13 runners that were identified. And the last infiltration level is weeklies. It's a week or intermittent stream. 43 weekers were identified. The data sheets that ACE did describe the various defects by each segment using a 1 through 5 numerical scale, with 1 being the least worrisome defect, 2, 3, 4, and 5 being the more serious. Damage was prioritized and is being evaluated by Public Works at this time to address. Out of 275 sections, there were 93 level 5 breaks, which are a priority. There were 34 level 4 breaks, again a priority. 12 level 3, 17 level 2, 3 level 1 breaks, and then there were 116 sections that were identified that did not have significant problems. Some of these sections have multiple breaks for structural issues. Best case scenario would be that one section out of the 93 level 5 breaks, that one section might have 2 or 3 or 4 of those, so that when we dig that up to take care of it, it's all taken care of. We eliminate 3 or 4 at a shot. There were also some blocked sewer segments. Some of them were blocked or partially blocked to the extent that APC was not able to run their TV inspection machine to the receiving manhole. APC inspections reports clearly show the blockage, and each blockage was confirmed by going to the manhole on the other end to take a look at it, come from that end to make sure that there was blockage. I think I have a picture of that. That is a utility line of some sort that is coming through, that has been bored through at some point. And I think that might be one of them that Paul already has taken care of. but there are a few others. Some of the horizontal boring machines, we don't have, when it was put in, some of the information as far as how far it is down from the surface. Some of that has been sketchy in the past. So when the lateral boring comes in to run, say, a fiber optics cable or something like that, it can go right through it and they'd never know it. And then we find it like this. So, utility blockage, some cable or pipe is passed through the sewer pipe. There's 2 cases of that. There were 4 cases of collapsed pipe, and 2 cases of deformed pipe that were identified. And that is common for PVC pipe. You can see right here, this is a PVC pipe, and you can see how it's being deformed. This one actually is deformed with a gusher in it. As time goes on, you can expect more and more of that with PVC pipes. That was a lot of the stuff. Those are identified up in Centennial Hills, I believe, is where most of the PVC pipe was laid. Paul can correct me if I'm wrong on that. And then the other 2, you can kind of see the cracks on the top, on the crown of the pipe. Those cracks, those are the things that we're looking for, some pipe deterioration. That is ongoing, and I believe this one down here on the bottom left is also a blockage. Cost of repairs, 33 sections, and again, this is in situ, in position, in place fixes. 33 sections can be rehabilitated by lining. The average for lining is 350-foot line at $25 per foot to line it. 40 repairs can be completed by cure in place. Estimated at $1,750 per repair. 30 lateral connection repairs, that comes up to about $22.50 per repair. Hitting those repairs right there that they have identified, those are the priority ones that Larkin has identified to start taking care of as soon as possible. Cost of repairs, and kind of did the math there for you, comes out to about $505. That is just, again, to take care of some of the priority ones, the priority 3 and 4, to take care of some of those priority issues. This doesn't take care of the level 1, 2, and 3 issues. And that final amount comes in a little later. That's why the approximate bill on it is about $1 million to complete all of it. This looks at just the primary problems at this time. Future, we're meeting with Larkin on October 14th. Any board member that is interested is encouraged to go. Several of you have already said that you were wanting to go. Larkin will be presenting before the board of Aldermen on October 24th to discuss. They'll be coming here to discuss phase 1, emergent issues, the timeline, and review of the projects. That's phase 1 projects that we have going. Timeline issues, they'll be talking about that. Also what we discussed tonight, timeline as far as to start working on those. And then future directions, again, Northwest Plant, Southwest Lagoon, and other things that the board so desires. One thing I will say is what I am working with Paul to do, and Paul and Kenny and Delbert are working quite a bit on, is planning, lots and lots of planning. Major planning is underway in the Public Works Department to coordinate sewer repairs that require digging, so that we can coordinate those with the street rehabilitation or reconstruction. That's the big stuff. The big problem that a lot of people say, when they talk about this prototype is that they lay a new street, put new pavement down, and 6 months later they tear it up so that they can replace a sewer line or something like that. That's the kind of thing that we really want to avoid, and in doing so, it takes a lot of planning to make sure that we know exactly where we're hitting first, in conjunction with the street repairs. Coordination of water line repairs at the same time, in conjunction with those sewer line repairs, and then initial planning concerning sewer repairs, concerning the recommended in-position repairs that we're going to do, how we can start on those. And I'll let Paul answer some of the questions. I'll be here for support.
Any questions from the board on the presentation? Mr. Yancey?
That's getting to be a joke. And my question is really information. You know, it's good to get all this information. And one of the things that I want to bring forward was the fact that we have applied for a grant. And I think this information would probably reinforce our position in obtaining that grant. Because isn't the grant for sewer improvements?
No, the grant's for water.
Oh, it's for water?
Yeah, it's for water, not wastewater.
Well, we can show them where it's not going. This is part of the phase 1 project? Okay.
And it's giving us, you know, some of the planning that we need for the next phases and how we're going to build this out and plan these out. So.
Yeah, but I still think this information might be well,
oh, I agree.
You know, given to Freddie Wells, our grant writer, and she could probably use it to our benefit in some way. Because it does show that.
Next year's.
Yeah, we can use it for next year's for phase 2. That we can apply again next year for another 500.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, or more. So I think the plan is to provide this to Freddie.
Right.
Because it would definitely be our benefit to do that.
I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Paul?
What this will actually do, we're required by the state of Missouri to do this kind of thing. By us doing that, this will, and then the improvements that we make, hopefully will take a big portion of the I&I out of the running, and the state will open up the southeast section that will allow sewer extensions there. And we still have to address the northwest and southwest, and of course that's all coming.
Any other questions for Paul?
I can't remember percentage-wise of the sewage pipe system. What do we now have mapped as far as Cameron percentage?
We've got about 10 miles of probably 13, a rough guess is 15 miles, or 13 miles of sewer. So this section was about 10 miles.
So we have a small minority left to map.
But you've got just as big of problems over there, other than you've got I&I coming in, but you don't have the surcharges.
No, I agree. We still need to get it mapped. I'm just trying to think of, you know, what we were able to accomplish this year. Thank you.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay, seeing none, go ahead, and the other pieces of information only in your package, but Finance Committee report. The 3 aldermen that were on the Finance Committee meeting today, are there any updates or information, feedback you can provide from your meeting?
We did meet this afternoon. Meeting was, for the most part, at the beginning, just a how do we want to approach this, what do we want to accomplish type of meeting. We talked about the data that's presented to us, and can that be presented in a more informative manner, and staff is working to do that as they have been doing continually, but we want to continue to improve that. One particular thing that we talked about was some of the larger projects that we work on, kind of an update of those as we go along. For example, we talked about the street repairs that we have undertaken this summer. We budgeted, or we approved expenditures of $74,000 to date with the bills that we have in. We have spent $53,000 of that 74. We think there's still a little bit more work that Paul wants to do, and there are still a few more bills probably to come in with that. But we would like to begin to present those as a summary for this meeting. We did review the check runs, and were able to get satisfactory answers to all of our questions there. Again, would entertain any questions that the rest of the board might have had, but
So my question is, and this is just more of an outline of this, going forward, do you want to put the Finance Committee report right at the same time that we do the consent agenda? That way that can lead directly into that?
I think that's very appropriate.
At this point, it was really just to kind of see how things went and
right.
how we see it lining up. But I think in the future, we'll go ahead and move it to the consent agenda, and we'll use your report to kick off the consent agenda discussion.
And at this point, our recommendation would be to approve that consent agenda.
All right. Well, we can do that when we get there. All right, next on the agenda is old business. So the first is the MPUA Energy Audit Software Program, and Floyd Gilzow is here.
Mayor, thank you. We hand an item out to each of you. As I understand, Ms. McCoy at the last meeting mentioned that we were offering this, and council had some questions, and so I'm here tonight not to sell you on this, but to simply answer your questions. Let me quickly okay, we're on. Simply mention this is an online software system that can be made available to the citizens of Odessa to assist them in determining what improvements they want to make on their home to make them more energy efficient. This is a software package that is in use through various parts of the United States. Our member services committee, made up of representatives of a number of our cities, came to us and said, this is something our citizens would like to have in our community. Let's see what we can put together. This is essentially being done at cost. We're contracting with a company out of Atlanta, Georgia, and essentially what we're doing is dividing up the cost of the license among all the cities that decide they want to participate. An individual would go in, answer some questions about the size of their home, number of windows, the kind of appliances, their utility bills, and then the system would come back and say, here are some issues you may want to be looking at. For instance, the size of your home and the amount of your consumption don't quite match. Here are some things you may want to look at. To give you a real quick story, a friend of mine came to me and essentially Gary said to me, have you been watching these compact fluorescent light bulbs? This was a few years ago, and I said, well, yeah, Gary, we're monitoring how those things work and the benefits that you get from them. He said, well, man, I'm just really excited. He said, I went out and changed every incandescent light bulb in my house, and I'm seeing a 25% reduction in my light bill. And I looked at him and I said, Gary, you're a good friend, but I said, are you sure it's 25%? And he pulled out a file folder and he had his last 2 years' electric bills. And I looked over the last 6 months, and sure enough, he was seeing right at a 25% decrease in his electric bill. And I said, are you sure you didn't do anything else? He said, well, I said, did you change appliances? No. Did you get rid of a television set? No. I said, did you turn off a hot tub? I don't have a hot tub. Finally, he said, well, you know what I did do? He said, we had that old beer refrigerator down the basement, and we unplugged that. I said, Gary, as much as I'd like to give credit to compact fluorescents, lighting only accounts for about 10% of your electric bill. Most of your savings came out of that beer refrigerator. Having a review, a stylized review, a statistical review, can help identify areas where people may be losing energy. And again, the cost of this, it's not inconsequential. The startup cost is $2,500. However, the ongoing cost, and I say however, is 31 cents per meter year. You all have about, I've forgotten now, it ended up being about $700 a year to continue to provide this. About 2,350 meters, I think, somewhere in that vicinity, roughly, so a little over $700 a year. But that's, as I said, it's a service that our members had asked us to arrange. I have about 12 cities that have indicated a desire. It looks like we're going to have about 63,000 meters on this system. And that doesn't count what Odessa may decide it wants to do here in the next month. So, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to present. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
If I remember correctly, it's been a year or so. We had something like this brought before us before. And I thought we had approved to move forward with it, but we got held up with something. It's been, I don't know, anyway, do you remember that, John?
Yes, I was going to ask, well, when is the deadline for us to make a decision?
Because I know we had discussed something like this before, and I don't know if it was this one. How long
It was last
has
month. Floyd was here.
Yeah, what occurred, the old version, the original version of this is going to be highly subsidized by our organization. We were doing it through our low interest loan program, some revenues that we were receiving from that. However, in the meantime, we had something called the market meltdown, and we essentially lost that program for about a year and a half. We're just now getting it back, so this is an unsubsidized activity. We tried to push forward on it, but because we didn't have the money, we weren't able to pursue it the way we wanted to. And Mayor, you're exactly right. It was an issue that we discussed back then.
Alderman Wright.
Well, I guess my question has to do with, I do work in Oklahoma, so I'm down there in a motel at night. Anyway, they have their council meetings on TV, on public television and everything. Anyway, so I watch them a lot, just to kind of see how other cities operate and what they do and all this stuff. This was brought before the city of Oklahoma City, and they had a lot of issues in their discussion, saying that there was a lot of security issues in this program. I was just wondering if you'd heard anything like that about this. I don't know if it was this particular program or whatever, but it was something just like it.
If you were integrating your local billing practices into this, there might be security issues involved in it. You do not have to do that. You can simply, as your own homeowner, put your own data in, all of your own materials in. There would not be a security issue associated with this. Now, if you're using, for instance, a smart grid system, which I believe is what Oklahoma City was looking at, then yes, I can understand concerns over smart grid or over security.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
The deadline for a decision.
In a perfect world, I'd like it by the end of October, but if you all want to go into November, I'm sure we can make that work. If you know you don't want to do it, I'd like to know that sooner than if you do want to do it. Money would be in 2012, if that's an issue.
And I'm assuming the $700 per year is paid up front along with the $2,500 for the
That's
first year.
correct.
Any other questions? Do you want time to review this, and then we can bring it back at the next meeting? That way, it'll still be in the month of October, and if we want to move forward with it, we can do it at that time. Is there one?
Yeah, I agree.
Is there, just a question, is there any other group that's currently using this specific software? I know Alderman Wright asked about the Oklahoma City, but somebody who would be using it in the manner that we might be considering, not necessarily the smart grid.
Yes, there are a number of them. Unfortunately, I'm drawing a blank on who they are. I can get Marcella in the next week, can get her some local internet location.
Mr. Mayor, this, as I understand it, this is a software access that the city would pay for to be utilized by the citizens of Odessa to
That's
evaluate
correct.
their own home on their own computer, correct?
That's at least on a terminal, yeah.
I have a PC at home. Is that a terminal?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Has to have web access.
You have to have web access, that's correct.
Yeah, so they're just hitting the website, putting in information, based upon that information, it makes recommendations.
That's correct.
Any other questions?
If we were to do this, and you commit to the 2,500 plus the annual fee, and are there ways to get what our citizen usage of that is, so that we know that at the end of a year's time we've got our 2,000 odd meters and 20% of the people used it? Obviously, it's not something that's being well received. Is that something that we can stop at that point and say,
Yes.
this doesn't work for us?
You can.
Okay.
It's done on a year-to-year basis.
So you pay for a year up front,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah,
when
you're
it's
gonna-
renewal, you
yeah.
decide whether to renew or not.
Whether
For
it's
$700
whether it's feasible or not.
or.
If you're getting participation, it's useful, it's a good thing. If you're not, you can exit.
I have one question. You mentioned smart grid. That is one thing that is kind of a wave of the future. There's a lot of municipalities and electric utilities going to that. How is their interface with like certain groups like Elster, their smart grid and things like that? Is there interface of this software with that? If the city started looking at a smart grid system for our system.
Generally, you're not going to integrate a smart grid that measures usage on a 5-minute interval with this. It will essentially interface to the billing software. Because what you're really after is how much has been consumed in a month or in a given period of time.
Okay, because I know that some of the smart grid systems has this capability to monitor usage, also give real-time quotes on how much customer's bill would be and things like that. That's already integrated into their system, and so that's one thing that I would be concerned about, is that if we did something like this, would we be duplicating efforts if we eventually did move towards a smart grid system for utility billing?
But at that point, this is yearly, and that'd be a plan. You can just drop this. It's a yearly thing, and it's minimal cost. So,
given all the complexities in smart grid, and I don't mean to downplay smart grid because I think it offers some good strengths, this would be the smallest part of your consideration.
Any other questions? All right, we'll bring this back next time. Just feel free to review that, and we'll make sure it's included in the next packet as well. All right, thank you, Floyd.
Thank you.
All right, moving to new business. We have ordinance number 2833. This is an ordinance of the City of Odessa, Missouri, amending the provisions of Chapter 1 of the General Code of the Ordinances of the City of Odessa. I think it's cut off. is the first reading. It's also bill number 2011-25.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the first reading, bill number 2011-25, ordinance number 2833.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion. Alderman Wright.
I just want to be clear about this. Basically, all we're doing is taking out the dedication space that's